Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes Nigeria on independent television. We're live in Benin City, Nigeria. I'm Uyi Agmofegwe. On the program this week, we'll have two issues we want to look at. One is the insecurity in the country as it stands today. We've seen so much of evolution, if you like, along that line. In the north right now, we understand there's a protest going on about secure the north, and the north is boiling. Those are two basic hashtags trending across social media platforms right now, and of course we've seen stories about the fallout between protesters and the DSS in the north. But there is a history to all of this. The history dates back to every other time we talked about the Boko Haram between 2009 and 2010. Of course, we have not forgotten in a hurry the Mandala bombing in 2010. Some persons have come to call it the Christmas Day bombing. Since that time, it has been one incident after another in the ugly sense of that word. And today, we know where we are. It has evolved from terrorists to Boko Haram, from Boko Haram to bandits, and now we're hearing about the ISWAP and so on and so forth. At the point, it was just in the northeast, and then it continued to expand until it got to the northwest. So states like Zamfara, Kaduna, and Katsina, for instance, have not been able to sleep with both eyes closed for obvious reasons. The question is, what exactly led us to this point where we are today? What are the specifics that must be done to get us out of this point where we have found ourselves? And then we must also be able to find out what exactly is the impact that this is having on us as a people, as a government, and of course as an economy. Time and again we've seen instances where states in the north had telecoms services cut off. In a case, a place like Zamfara, for instance, there was a no-flight zone declared over that state. And then you're wondering, could we not have nipped this in the bud earlier? In any case, it's better late than never. They say, why are we still not able to be able to run circles around this menace of insecurity in not just the north, but in the whole of the country? Nigeria has become a country that talks more about insecurity than anything else. In fact, it will appear that we are not able to address economic issues or even have enough conversations about them, obviously because of the magnitude of insecurity that we are grappling with at this point in our history. The second issue we also want to consider on the program is the borrowing culture that we have come to find with this country. Just recently, a string of approvals had been made for the executive by the legislature. One of them being the $10 million grants and several other billions in the last few months that have been approved as requested by the executive. Officially now, we understand that Nigeria is indebted to the tune of at least 38 trillion naira. Earlier in the year, we're told there's a forecast that says by the end of 2021, Nigeria would have been indebted to the tune of at least 40 trillion naira. Some persons have argued that, look, it will take generations to offset these debts. In the meantime, the real concern for many Nigerians is, can we tie this borrowing to any specific project? Some persons have pointed out the railway projects that we have across this country, and then all of the Chinese loans that are coming into Nigeria. Of more concern, however, is the clauses, the terms and the conditions associated to, or if you like, tied to those Chinese loans. At the point, the Minister of Transportation was brought before a committee of the Senate to defend these loans. And one of the things many Nigerians got concerned about was that if we are not able to meet our obligation as a country, or if you like, as a beneficiary of these loans, Nigeria may lose, to an extent, sovereignty. Some persons have said certain national assets could be taken on account of the strength of those terms and conditions. Do we look like we understand these issues at all? Do we look like we have the slightest idea where we are and where we could be going, given the kind of predicaments that we are up against at this point in time? Those are some of the issues we want to look at on the program today. to return shortly, and then, of course, we'll put the discussion on the road. Stay with us. Destiny Owobo is an economist and a politician. He's on the show already. Felix Osareme will join us in the course of the discussion just to help us expand the narrative on 60 Minutes Nigeria today. Destiny, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
We appreciate it. Yeah, I know you and I have spent the last 2-3 years talking about economic issues,
of course,
from budget to all of the borrowing and so on and so forth. But I want us to start with the issue of insecurity.
Okay.
All right, you look at Nigeria today, for instance, you realize that we've come to a point where people are saying, look, at what point did we miss it? What exactly is the broken link that we have not been able to address as it stands today? Then again, you can't run away from the fact that it has its own economic implications. For example, in a situation like this, it's going to take the average prospective investor much longer time to decide whether they want to come to Nigeria or not. What have been your sentiments over time?
Yes, I think the approach the country is taking to solve the problem is the military approach. Okay,
that doesn't work.
It works sometimes, but in this type of insecurity problems we have, at the bottom of it, there are the sociological components, there are the poverty, economic components, there are the educational components. The government is investing heavily on the military angle to solving the problem. And if you notice, like the coronavirus, the insecurity problem in Nigeria has mutated to several dimensions. At first, it was Boko Haram, and then it became the Fulani jihadists, the bandits, and then kidnapping on the highways. And so what's happening is that
kidnapping for ransom.
For ransom. What's happening is that we are beginning to see several dimensions to it, and then we expect that more will come. Underlining all these types of insecurity problems is poverty. Poverty and mass illiteracy. Now, look at the Southwest, for instance. The educational level is very high here compared to the North. And so we can expect that before you convince a Southerner to take bomb or take a gun to go and kidnap people, you must check the variables. One, it's difficult to do that to a very educated person who has a functional job. Okay? But we cannot say that about the Northeast and those ravished places. The educational level is very low. Out of school enrollment is about 10 million people out of school. And most of these people have no formal education whatsoever. All they have is basic Islamic education and things like that. And with a mind, an educated mind will not easily become a tool in the hand of a terrorist. Okay, so these are the things we did not consider. Now, if you spent over 5 billion in the last 5 years to fight insecurity using the military angle, some people are saying, what if you had spent just half of it in trying to educate them? Put better schools in those areas, put better hospitals in those areas, create a community effort to educate the people. We may not be able to do anything much about the adults, but the children, because it appears that they have a continuous flow of recruits.
Yeah.
We should have expected that fighting Boko Haram for over 10 years, they should have been decimated by now, because we have seen the expression said by the military every time, we are decimated, we have made them incapable.
Technically defeated.
Such language. But what is happening is that we are seeing that it doesn't go like that. They even become more brazen. The last time they attacked the NDA office, in fact, our National Defense Headquarters, those are statements they are communicating to the government that they are not decimated. They are even getting stronger. Okay, so I think the government has been using one method to try to solve the problem. Whereas what some people would have imagined is we should fight it from all fronts. The educational front, the poverty front, the mass illiteracy, information front. We'll try and use other covert approaches to get these people. For instance, you can infiltrate them. And for instance, to find their networks. You should find their financiers, you should publish their names, you should be tracing accounts.
Maybe cut off their supplies?
Cut off their supplies and things like that. Other tactics which do not involve direct military engagement. And somehow, I think that will produce a better result than using only one means. I think that's where the government is not getting it right. Because we are seeing there's an economy of insecurity.
All right.
So what is happening now is that it's becoming lucrative to make the country insecure. Well, what do I mean by that? When the person is kidnapped for ransom, and then the person pays the ransom, and then the person gets away with it, he's going to plan another one. And so what happens is that we have not asked why the kidnapping for ransom is increasing. Because people are making money from it. There's an economy of it, supporting it. And so when this underground economy is not managed or dealt with, it will continue to happen. The people become more sophisticated, they have more resources to plan more hijacks and kidnaps. And so when it begins to happen every day, you hear it in the news, this person was kidnapped and killed, and then it appears as if the government is not proacting, but they are reacting. Okay.
So the damage would have been done before
it comes up, because we see it in the news, but something has happened before that. Whereas what we ought to be doing is using a proactive approach. For example, investing heavily in technology to see the locations. We are supposed to have a mapping of the entire Nigeria for security reasons. Use drones to check to
CCTV across cities,
and things like that, because this we can't do that with the human labor we have, but we can do that with technology. Map the entire country, network it with CCTV cameras. I mean, especially those zones. We should have a think tank group of scientists who study the pattern, because every crime has a pattern. Okay, the pattern is, where does it happen? When you catch any of them, you are supposed to do serious investigation. How does that person connect to the others? Who funds the system? Who's at the top? Who's at the bottom? More research into the criminal aspects of their of their actions, and who funds the system. We provide a lot of information which will help you deploy technology to comb out those areas. The government is not saying things like that. They are still using only the police and just basic intelligence. What we need is high-tech intelligence based on serious research on the flow of funds, flow of people, and even their network, how they get these people, how they get information about when to take a person, the bush they take them to, how they keep them there, and who is able to fund this system that makes it difficult for us to catch them before they do it. So we need to track these things. These things require sophisticated planning, and but the government, from what I see, is using what we call the reactive approach. They wait for it to happen, they talk about it, they try to...
There's something I want you to talk to me about, I mean, from the economic standpoint, apparently. This government in particular has had to borrow time and again just to say, want to buy weapons, want to strengthen our military capability, for example. Talk to me about how counterintuitive or otherwise that is.
When you have to buy weapons to fight insurgency, a faceless group, and you believe that the only solution is to use sophisticated weapons.
And then you're borrowing.
You're borrowing to do that. What you should be doing, you don't borrow to finance a deadweight spending, like fighting insecurity. What you should do is to borrow to finance training for the soldiers, and to teach how to develop the capability themselves. What if there was a time the United States decided not to sell weapons to us? Okay, so what happens when...
Got stranded.
Yes. What happens when these people refuse to sell weapons to you? High-grade weapons, because maybe there's a diplomatic rule or something. So you fall back, and then those people have the time to regroup. So what you should... The government by now, given that we have insecurity problems, should by now be investing in gun factories. By now should be investing in counterterrorism techniques. I mean, homegrown solutions to the problem. Because we cannot always depend on Western... In fact, in international trade, we have what we call strategic reasons. There are certain things you must not allow other countries to determine for you. One, your food security. Two, your weapons security. In all countries of the world, civilized countries, countries do at least try to get their own weapons, locally made weapons, using basic technology, which can be bought. You can buy technology and transfer and localize it. It is becoming obvious that Nigeria is becoming very insecure, and so we need more weapons to tackle these problems. So what happens to we investing heavily in gun technology, gun factories, licensed by the federal government, so that we produce weapons on the go without having... It will even teach us how to even create weapons and design our own missile system, instead of depending on one helicopter. Most of these helicopters, these high-grade military equipment, they are very expensive. And so when you shoot one down, you just shot millions of dollars down. There are some planes, military planes, that are worth millions of dollars because they have a lot of equipment. But the cost of the equipment does not mean it cannot be shut down.
Of course.
That's number one. Number two, when the Boko Haram or these terrorists attack this Nigerian army having these weapons, they often seize some of this equipment. Okay, so it's a battle. And so when they hit you, they get hold of that equipment and take it to their place, study it, and use it against you too. So we must look at the covert aspects of war, not only the overt aspects like weapons and things like that. We must look at the parts of the war that cannot be touched, the mind part. What is going underground without the weapons? I think the war is won at that level, not at the military angle.
Yeah.
In fact, America tried the military angle when they fought Vietnam, and they lost, because you cannot always win every war using military weapons. That's why we have guerrilla warfare and other kinds of warfare. So this warfare is unconventional. You can't expect to win an unconventional war with conventional methods. So we must have a system to nip it in the bud, and that requires, like I say, it always requires intelligence. We need to train our officers, we need to upgrade our military capabilities in terms of mind, ability to research the situation and produce results that are off the book. So these are the things I think the government is not looking at. I've not seen any standard research going on in the military where they are thinking of ways to tackle the problem without thinking about military equipment. You know.
So bombardment alone cannot solve the problem?
I don't think it will solve the problem. You can bombard people, but you cannot bombard ideologies. The fuel for this crisis is ideology. You can't take these things off their heads. So you may kill a lot of them, but they have children, they preach. Who
are bought into the same thinking.
So these people are coming up. So the more you kill, the more they come up. So but there's a way to circumvent that. You create educational system, you create a health system, invest heavily in basic development indices in the north. When they are educated and they have access to better quality life, then they are able to appreciate life the way you want them to appreciate it. And it's very difficult for you to use them for terrorism.
As I sit here with you on the program, I recall in my third year in university, one of the subjects I enjoyed real big time was arms smuggling. All right, small arms smuggling.
Yes.
All right, and then just earlier this year, I saw a chart of how that is becoming concerning, how small arms are being smuggled into sub-Saharan Africa, including Nigeria. For example, that means there's a huge market for it. So now you're looking at economics and ideology on the one hand, against whatever arrangements that the government is making. For example, that has a lot of implication, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It does. Like I told you, there's economics of crime, like we said. The smuggling business itself is billions of dollar business. The government has done everything to stop it, but we still hear of reports of them hijacking a large trailer load of heavy weapons. So there's an economy of it. We have the supply chain. So, like I said, you need to study the system. Who are the suppliers? Who are the buyers? What is their trade routes? How do they move these things? These things do not require bombardment. They require you to arrest some people and get intelligence information from them. How do you get weapons? Where do they keep it? How come the thing evades the government? If you're able to study it, you hit it from the points. Okay, you hit it from the suppliers, you hit them from the buyers. There are big players you take out, and then these smaller people at the bottom will just go out. Like I said, it's like the drug trade. You see, America spends billions of dollars looking for big titans in the trade network. Okay, they did that to the Cuban. What's his name?
The Mexican too.
The Mexican, Joachim. They did that to him. Go and check. They tried to nip out the big drug lords. Now, if you do that, you may not solve the problem immediately, but of course, when those big powers are out, you make it smaller. You make them smaller, and then when they are smaller, they are splinter groups. It's easy to crack them than when they have institutional power. What we should avoid here is not to allow these small economies become titans and now begin to engage the federal government itself. Because these people funding, they are still hiding now. If you don't trace them and knock them out, they become richer and become government more powerful. And when they become more powerful, they are difficult to deal with. Okay, so that's why I say it requires intelligence. There's an economics of everything. Anything you see that is growing, in economics we predict that when the price is high, the supply is high. It applies to everything. When you see terrorism going up, it means there's an economy of it. When you see insecurity going on, it means insecurity is becoming a rich business. I'll give you an example. During the Jonathan government, the NSA was said to have stolen 2.5 billion, given for warfare.
Allegedly.
Allegedly, so to speak. The matter is still in court. And then the question we want to say is this: because 2.5 billion was meant for arms,
of course,
but somehow it went underground somehow by allegation. It means even within the military, some people are profiting from the system.
So for such persons, the war should never end.
It should never end. So I mean, it's about money. Some people may see it as opportunity to make a lot of money. There's an economy of every disservice to humanity. So what we should try to do is to crack this economy. When you crack this economy, you look for the points, and then you take out some people. It requires strong national will. Recently, Dubai released a statement about financiers of the Nigerian terrorist system. Yeah. And then people were saying the federal government should publish it.
And follow up.
And follow up. Did you hear anything about it? That's an indictment. If the federal government refused to follow that thing up and take it seriously, what are they hiding? What exactly? Who are these players? Why is it what is so difficult about publishing their names, even if they are alleged? We should be seeing some investigations going on, some arrests going on. A sovereign state is making a statement that they've done research and they've seen these financiers of this whole thing. The government should take it up from there, investigate these people and bring them out. We should be seeing some sincerity here. The fact that there's always a cloud around what the government does, this secrecy, allows people to begin to think that they are not serious about what they claim. Okay, it's an indictment. The Halliburton scandal was widely celebrated worldwide, and then we expected some names in Nigeria were mentioned, and none of them have been investigated. It communicates to the international community that the country is not a serious country. Like I said, a country that is serious does not play with information. Now, when such information comes, instead of the federal government to take them seriously, they begin to say its publicity is just propaganda, and they don't look at the merit of it. Each case has its own merit, so it should be investigated. The problem of terrorism can be solved. Our problems of insecurity can be solved, but you require intelligence and the right will, political will, to push it through. Okay. Now, if you check, the debate is either whether we should call them terrorists or bandits. That's a very myopic way of looking at the situation. Are we trying to classify? When you classify them as terrorists or bandits, does it change the...
So that sounds like we're putting the cart before the horse.
Yes, lives are at stake. A lot of people are dying.
But meanwhile, you're talking about nomenclature.
In nomenclature.
I want us to take a break at this point, right? When we return, we're going to add one more guest to the discussion, just to expand the narrative for you on 60 Minutes Nigeria. Do stay with us. Everyone, we've just been joined by Felix Osareme. He's of the Department of International Studies and Diplomacy, University of Benin. I should say prestigious University of Benin, by the way. Thank you, Felix, for coming on the program.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. So I want to drag into this narrative. By the way, we're moving to our second discussion, which focuses on borrowing at this point and what exactly the implications are for a country like Nigeria. Some persons have said Nigeria has been set back by 20 years by whatever standard or assessments that may be. But the real concern they're pushing is the fact that we have borrowed to a point where it will take maybe 2 generations, who knows, maybe 3, by their own assessments, to be able to defray all of this borrowing that we're doing today. Good thing is I have a panel of discussants who will help us find sense in all of this. But first, I want to drag your attention into something that former President Olusegun Obasanjo said recently. He said, look, if you expect President Muhammadu Buhari to do any more than he has already done, you'll be wasting time. Isn't that jumping the gun, really? The man still has close to 2 years to leave office, at least well over a year to leave office.
No, he's not jumping the gun. I remember former President Olusegun Obasanjo once told us that the army does not reinforce failure. And that was just before the re-election of the incumbent President Muhammadu Buhari in 2019. You know, he made that statement clearly that the first tenure, the 4 years from 2015 to 2019, was replete with failed promises. In fact, I think when the incumbent administration came on board, there was so much goodwill, so much hope. People really saw the meat in quotes, of Buhari as a messiah, and they had so much confidence in him. A lot of people said even if he had bread label as a certificate, or if he brings a NEPA bill, they will vote for him. They preferred him over a man that was certified, qualified, who was already having a doctorate degree. Some people said the former President Jonathan's doctorate degree was from Onitsha or Aba. It was that bad, you know. And Jonathan left as president by saying that he is the most vilified in the history of Nigeria as a country and possibly the world all over. But the Nigerians will remember him when he has left. That they will remember the freedom, the opportunity, that the economy is where. He also warned this country that they should not sacrifice a government of technocrats, of people that were working day and night to move the country forward, for a government of power-hungry and self-seeking individuals whose only claim to popular recognition is, in quotes, an unestablished foundation that will not move the country from where it is to where it needs to be. 4 years down the road, it was already obvious. So when former President Obasanjo said that in 2019, just before the election, that the army does not reinforce with law, he was already sounding a note of warning that Nigerians should not re-elect Buhari for a second term. But Nigerians did. So we are stuck with it. And what he said was also clear, that flogging a dead horse will not make the horse run faster. The horse is dead, it's dead. So either you butcher the carcass and convert it to meat, or you leave it there, it will rot. But to ask more from someone who does not have that capacity, it will be delusional. In fact, Nigerians actually enjoy self-delusion. I'm sad to say this, but it is true. We are the only country that we do something and expect a miracle. And the bishop of, I think, Sokoto Diocese, no, Matthew Kuka.
Kuka, yes.
Kuka
Sokoto Diocese.
Yes, Sokoto Diocese. That Nigerians are the only ones in this world who will elect a man that is not having the modern capacity to move on to modernity and expect him to modernize the country. So if Obasanjo said anything, Obasanjo is not talking from both sides of his mouth. He's making a clear statement. I think I admit, I don't want to say I think, I admit that we have challenges in this country. But we also want to be fair enough to ourselves to believe that our current administration is not showing us the way out of the woods. I
was asking that question on account of the fact that the President Muhammadu Buhari government has made several requisitions to the Senate or to the National Assembly overall to say, look, we have economic issues, we have financial constraints, we have to borrow. For the most part, all of these requisitions have been approved, including the latest one, which again is in a series. We understand that overall, at the end of the day, we will be looking at 40 trillion naira of debts. All right, for Nigeria as a country. Economists will say, like himself, that it's not wrong to borrow, but we must start borrowing to development. We must start borrowing to specifics. Projects that are concrete on the ground and value adding. For instance, where are we missing it? Is it because we're too focused on elections, for example?
Well, thank God we have an economist in the house. He will take the ball and roll it very well later. But let me also chip in my own side. Any government sustains its administrative processes by its capital flow. Now, governments get money by certain established means, which are legal. One, government can raise money by taxation. Governments can get grants, which are long-term supports, which you don't have to service, but you have an agreement. At a particular time, you make a refund. So you are not charged for it. Government can take loans at commercial rates or at development rates agreed upon between the government and the lender institution. Government can also get remittances. For example, we have a lot of Nigerians who are outside the country. They bring money to the country. So you can get FDI, foreign direct investment. Those are not your money. It's for those who bring it in to do business in your territory and move out. So in all of this, governments make money. And governments also have to plan and ensure that, which is one of the primary duties of government, the ability to put in place plans and programs to develop the economy. So borrowing itself, it's not negative. It is not the borrowing that is the problem, because nobody should run away from the fact that borrowing is normal. In fact, most big businesses always take facility when they want to expand.
Yeah.
When they want to acquire new technology, they may have to take more than they have. But you see, it is targeted at a particular end. When you now see that we are borrowing maybe to pay salaries, or we say we want to do a particular road, which is not going to transform the economy, then there will be a problem. Nigerian government today, we know the administration of Buhari has borrowed a lot of money. They're taking some sukuk bonds. Sukuk bonds are those ones that are non-interest yielding from Islamic countries and banks. Those ones are there. There are other commercial loans that have been sourced, particularly from the EU, from China. Those are the ones that are dangerous. Those are the ones that will tie us up. And we'll now ask ourselves this question: what are these loans for? If you take a loan maybe to develop Second Niger Bridge, are you going to put a toll at both ends to make sure that within a particular period of time the road will be returning some money, that bridge? If you take foreign assistance bond to do a road from, let's say, Benin to Auchi to link Abuja, you should also realize that within 2 years that road will go bad. Did you factor in the renovation of that road? If you did not, then you are borrowing to waste. And
they're recouping whatever you invested.
That's the point. Because you can, unless you now, that's why toll gates are actually needed. In most of these good roads, if you develop the road, put in emergency facilities, put in security details, and make sure that the road is properly used, you can get the money back. Is that what we have now? That is not what we have. So we thank God we are Nigerians. We sit in Nigeria. We travel around Nigeria as much as security permits us these days. We see these things on a daily basis. So it is therefore very sad that the government has borrowed so much, and it is now a common jibe on social media to hear that they said the Minister of Power and Housing, Babajide Fashola San, said that they are borrowing so that the future generation of Nigerians will not borrow. So they have already borrowed for the future generation. So borrowing itself is not the problem. When you took this money, what was it used for? Did you now create a refinery that will be producing enough fuel that will now export and make money from? Did you set up any heavy industry, maybe iron and steel, that will employ young, productive graduates and others and create a good artisan base? Did you invest in power generation, transmission and distribution?
Or critical infrastructure?
These are critical infrastructure. That's why I mentioned power, steel. Then if you take loans to pay salaries, which is recurrent expenditure, you are going to, in fact, you are postponing the evil day. That's counterproductive. It is, because people will just consume it. And we therefore find that most of our loans are consumer loans. They don't help this economy to grow. Meanwhile, this is the same administration that said, okay, they are going to stop importation of rice so that we'll build local capacity. Right now, like Nigerian rice is almost pursuing the price of the so-called foreign rice. So at the end of the day, on both sides, you are locked in. It's like between the devil and the deep blue sea, what we call Hobson's choice in economics. Any of the choice you make, you are going to suffer. So it's unfortunate, but that is where we are today. And when we find that the government is requesting more loans, most of the time they are taking these loans. They are not taking loans for the, they keep telling that it's for security purpose. I got a whisper from the discussion it was making about the investment in security over the years. You have put so much into security. If you put that money back into development, insecurity will disappear. It is underdevelopment that is creating the insecurity. It's affecting education, it's affecting health, it's affecting movement, it's affecting the economy directly in terms of production and circulation. Why don't you, of course it's not possible, this is hypothetical now, because it will take drive and political will and stemming corruption to address these challenges. If you put in, let's say, over the last 5 years to the 6th year of this administration, put in, let's say, 5 trillion into education, health, and industries, I'm telling you, it will turn this country around.
We can't wait to see that turnaround happen. But I want to talk about China in particular, because while Nigerians are overall concerned about the borrowing we're doing, Destiny, they are more, if you like, they're more cynical about the Chinese loans, because they say they've seen a few African countries where the Chinese authorities have come to, quote unquote, take charge by way of taking over their assets.
National assets.
National assets, yes, in particular. So where does all of this leave us as a country? Because we are told that one of those clauses, or some of those clauses, specify that if we breach the terms of these loans made available to us, we may have some of our national assets taken over by the Chinese government. This is not a Nollywood story, is it?
It's not. I also think that most of that fear is based on what is happening to other countries. There's an act that controls the terms of our borrowing.
Okay.
It's called the Fiscal Responsibility Act, and it specifies the conditions under which you can contract a loan. So what we should be looking at is, what does that act say? And is there any violation of that act by the federal government in a bid to get loans from China? Have we seen the contracts? Have we seen the terms of agreement? We cannot be using the models of other countries. We have to be very specific. There's a law that determines our borrowing in this country, the terms of borrowing under which we can contract any loan. And so experts need to look at that law, and then experts need to look at the specific contracts with China, and see whether there's a violation of the terms of those laws. And if there is, people should be suing the federal government. We shouldn't be talking about it. If there's any way the federal government violates the provisions of the Fiscal Responsibility Act, is a law, then it means that's a financial malfeasance or misappropriation. They have broken the law. People in public interest can sue the federal government to implement the provisions of the act. Okay, that's the issue. So that we don't get very emotional about Chinese taking other people's property. They may want to do that to us too. Okay, that should be the discussion. Okay, because we don't yet have the terms of the agreement between Nigeria and China. We should be asking such questions. Bretton Woods institutions are very influential when it comes to our economic policies. 1 minute they wake up and they tell you, well, you have to devalue your currency. The next day they wake up on whatever side of the bed and they tell you, well, you have to take a second look at your FX regime, for instance. To what extent does that, if you like, alter or influence our ability to make decisions internally? Yeah, I think those Bretton Woods institutions are working with a basic model of an economy, how an economy operates. There's Nigerian economy. Isn't that intrusive? Yes. No, it's not. It's not. It is in your sovereign right to determine how you accept global policies. Okay, so that's why I say we need think tanks. It's a negotiation game. From the World Bank's perspective, the world should operate according to a set of rules. And these are based on models of functional economies. So when you talk about borrowing, allowing FX market rates and things like that, it's based on the people who develop these policies are from the developed world. And so they have some basic templates by which they determine the success of an economy. But like I told you, Nigeria is a dysfunctional economy. We do not operate the market system perfectly. In paper, it appears it's a market system, but we have a socialist system backing the market system in Nigeria. For example, what explains the shipping of millions of naira to the northern people, 5,000 naira per lattice and things like that? We operate a socialist model, and then we call it capitalist. And so some of these things are based on the capitalist model, where you give people money and then people have to earn it. So we borrow, for instance, to fund, like my learned friend said, to fund socialist values. Whereas when you borrow, the ability to repay a loan is based on funding capitalist values. I mean, people should be able to pay for the services they enjoy. So you cannot borrow $5 billion, for instance, to fund a road that you will not charge the people to use and expect to be able to pay back. So using that money has to come from somewhere. It has to come from somewhere. Who pays? Who pays the price? That's the question. We don't know how to apportion cost and apportion prices. So we borrow. We are using emotional values. Okay, because of politics, sometimes socialism over trumps capitalist values. So you borrow to make people, to make the country appear, to make people see you as a good leader. You want to make people happy. But when you get out of power, somebody has to pay at some point. So like I said, when you look at the Bretton Woods institutions, they mean well for the global community. But you have to look at your basic economics, the dynamics of your economy. So when you want to accept such things, you look at the difference, the similarities between your economies and the global economies, and the differences, and factor in the peculiarities of your economy into forming any contract engagements with countries. You know why you do that? Because no two economies are the same. The US can borrow $1 billion and use it to fund a project, and it will have 10 times multiplier effect. Whereas that same amount we put into the Nigerian economy, because we don't have a robust market and a well-developed society, the same money may frizzle out into the hands of 5 people because there are leakages in the system. These leakages, when developing the model, they did not factor in these leakages. They developed the model in a perfect world, but Nigeria is not a perfect situation. So if you lend 5 billion to 5 countries, you cannot use macroeconomic models to predict the impact on the 5 countries because all of them are going to interpret it differently based on these functionalities of structure.
There are peculiarities.
Yeah. So those are the things we should be looking at. How do we know the structure of our economy? Do we understand the forces that determine change, that determine progress in the economy? What are the critical points where money flows and people can generate jobs? What is more important in Nigerian economy may not be what is more important in other economies. So like I said, it is the job of Nigerian experts to look at the Nigeria, come out with research to determine what are the forces of growth in this country. And then when we determine the forces of growth, given our peculiarities, when we borrow, we fund those forces. For instance, Bill Gates said some time ago that Nigeria is not solving its problems. And people asking what he meant by that. He believes that the biggest problems Nigerians need to be solving is human development, not infrastructural development. And this is why he believed that. When you build infrastructures and the people are not well upgraded intellectually to maintain the infrastructures,
they will sink it.
They will sink it. But if you build people intellectually and increase their capabilities, then they can build the infrastructure, maintain it, and rebuild it in future. So it's a game of opportunity cost. Where are we spending most of our money into? Are we building the capacity of Nigerians? You know what it means for you to say we have 206 million Nigerians, and out of these 206 million Nigerians, 65 million are between the ages of 20 and 40. And out of these 65 million, not up to 10 million Nigerians are experts. Okay? So we don't have the critical mass of people to drive the change that we seek. Like I said, how many software engineers do we have? How many medical doctors do we have, especially when they are leaving this country every day? How many professors are willing to work in this country? How many scientists do we have?
And give their all.
And give their all. How many security agents, intelligence security agents are in this country? We ignored education. Like I said, Nigeria will not make any meaningful progress if we underrate the power of education. I've said that many times. One educated guy called Mark Zuckerberg runs an institution that has 3.2 billion people inside his machine and generates billions of dollars. Okay, the total budget of Nigeria is $45 to $50 billion. Zuckerberg is worth over $160 billion. That's to tell you the power of one human developed, properly developed. Now imagine if you could do that to 10 million Nigerians. Develop their capacities to think, to design systems, to build companies, corporations. You see that our problems will be multiplied. The solution will be multiplied many times. But now what are we solving? We are building roads, building bridges, and we are ignoring the human component. These bridges that we are building, they will go bad in a couple of years if we do not develop the capacity to run big roads like that.
Thank you.
So it's a matter of where are you taking this money to? What are the
prioritizing, right?
Prioritizing according to the specifics
and the urgency of the time.
And the structure of your economy.
Okay.
What drives the change more? Okay, I'll give you an example. In the last 5 years, over 5 Nigerians have created unicorn companies. A unicorn company is a company that generates millions of dollars in a very short period of time.
At least $1 billion and more.
$1 billion and more. They didn't say 5 infrastructures, 5 Nigerians. It's about people. So development first is about people. Then next about systems. And then next about the infrastructure that supports this.
Thank you so much. I want to talk to you, Felix, about HDI, Human Development Index, for example. I mean, that's where you talk about health, you talk about access to education, not just health, quality health care. Yeah. We still see people running out of this country to go seek health care abroad, including the president himself, for instance. And then we're told that all the hospitals have been equipped. And then when you look at the HDI, whether from 2015 to now, when we had the MDGs, and now that we have the SDGs, you realize that Nigeria has not looked good for over a decade in that index. What stops us from going back to the drawing board, as they say, to look at our priorities again and say, why don't we do some more investments in health and in education? We keep talking about the 26% required by UNESCO. And somebody said that Nigeria is not a UNESCO country. Whatever that means, but can we not be truthful to ourselves about our problems and use that truth to find real-time solutions?
Yeah, generally, we believe in flight of fancy. We appropriate to what we call the global standard, but we don't internalize it. Human Development Index is the key to, in fact, development is intrinsic. When you are reading about development in textbooks, it is different from when you are practicalizing it in the field. Now, Teodoro dos Santos of the Economics Commission of Latin America, the ECLA, they came up with an argument when they were talking of dependency theory. It may sound Marxist, but it is pragmatic. That there are countries that are manifesting controls from outside, but they think they are independent. Bretton Woods sets a framework. Bretton Woods will tell you, World Bank, the IMF will tell you, this is the regime you will adopt in terms of your capitalization, what you will use for your interest rates. They will give you the frame because they are going to push funds to you. Those funds are meant to help you transform. Now, the fund is not for consumption. I think that's where our problem is. When Nigerians are taking funds, we think of funds in terms of just cash. Yeah. You can say 1 billion. 1 billion is not always $1 billion in cash. They could bring vehicles, computers, even the consultants. They are factored into that $1 billion.
So there are flight tickets, hotel, feeding, and everything else.
It's only in Nigeria we don't calculate. That's why I mentioned that we just say we want to construct road for 20 billion. That road for 20 billion, what is the maintenance cost of that road? Add it to the cost of making
for the next 5, 10, 20 years.
That is where it becomes very economic. But we don't think like that. And funny enough, we have universities, we have economic professors. The government does not listen to anybody. There is this mindset. The Nigerian government is very good in propaganda. And as he rightly said, they are good at carrying people along with emotional claims, particularly when it's close to election.
Gentlemen, my fear is we're out of time again on the program, right? And that's very concerning. But then I think that's what happens when you have two brilliant gentlemen who are bringing insights into two very salient and timely conversations such as this one. I've been talking with Felix Soserime here and Destiny Onwobu. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the program. We appreciate it. This is what we're living it on 60 Minutes in Nigeria. This week, I'm Uyi Agumofwegwe. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again.